We should never allow the government to decide what is acceptable speech and what is unacceptable speech. We should penalize behaviors, not opinions, and not speech. If you start trying to regulate speech, you start trying to regulate thoughts, you start trying to regulate beliefs rather than behaviors, there's no way that you're not going to abridge the constitutional rights of millions of Americans.
Hello again. This video today is obviously very clear. It has to do with a specific month of this year, August 2018, and the lunacy that's been going on in America regarding certain subjects. I'm going to be talking about three different things. First of all is the fact that John McCain recently died of brain cancer. And his life is in itself questionable as to his loyalties, because he always identified himself as a Republican, and yet everything he did as senator for the state of Arizona was proven fact that he was a Democrat, because he patted Obama's behind more than once whenever he was visiting Arizona, or if he was in Washington with Obama. It was shown on many different candid shots that they filmed of him and Obama together, that he smacked his behind as he was going inside either the White House or in some capacity he was outside and people were filming him together. And when he obviously passed away this month, you had Obama, who was just so out of his way wanting to advocate and to sugar up John McCain's political life, his personal life. And this, beyond doubt, proves that he had loyalty to the Democrats. He didn't have loyalty to his own party, the Republicans. And another reason why that's proof positive is that Trump was in his crosshairs from the day that Trump became the President of the United States. The day he was inaugurated, John McCain was out there slashing a verbal machete like the Democrats have been doing, just like NBC News and the media have since he took office. And he also had an accomplice, and I'm going to bring his name up. You know who I'm talking about, Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, in the last couple of months, has been trying to disassociate himself with McCain, though when he died, he was as lovey-dovey about McCain's career and about him as a man as John Lewis and the others who represent the Democratic Party. I mean, this shows obvious loyalties that make no sense. If you're a Republican, you should be standing by your own party's views and opinions. And John McCain was never that. He never did. And the emphasis at his funeral was the fact that he was some great war hero who served in the war. And I keep thinking, well, isn't it important to bring up the person's actual past history as far as what they did in the political realm that he dedicated his life to? And the answer is he didn't. He stood by the Democrats no matter what they did, and when it came to him standing for the party he was supposed to have been associated with, he lied, cheated, crossed party lines, and did pretty much what Obama told him to. And I just want that record to be proof positive to those who still idolize not only Obama but McCain, because you think that McCain did such great things for Arizona, and really he did it only for the benefit of buttering up and endorsing Obama's global world order that he intends to continue, even though he's no longer president. But I guarantee you, in the next 5 years, Obama's face is going to probably be planted firmly in the United Nations as the president again, If not, that he finally will identify himself as the global leader of this world, and then we'll obviously know what the next step will be. World domination, just like Stalin, just like Lenin, Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, all of these dictators that have lived in the past 100 plus years had one attitude in mind from the beginning, and that was to take over everything, especially the free world. Now, Obama's only tip of the hat that you can say he helped to do in America was to destroy this nation's sovereignty as a free country. And now we are under the stipulation of a global world government that is being financed through the Bilderberg Group, through various world banks. And I guarantee you George Soros is also behind it, because it was his intention, just like Saul Alinsky did with his book, Rules for Radicals. He was teaching people how to believe that communism was the only true way to run a world, because if you control the masses, then you control their assets and their lives. And Obama certainly proved that during the 8 years he was president, and he continues it to this day. And please, don't put a wool cover over your head believing that Obama was great. He is some sort of a god. He's an idol that you can continually worship. They did that to Jim Jones. He killed almost 1,000 people in Jonestown, Guyana, back in 1978. And there are a lot of people to this day who survived the attack who weren't down there, and they still have a photograph of Jim Jones next to their bed. And I guarantee you there's a lot of people in America who have Obama's picture right next to their bed. They kiss his face every day, lick his hands, and all the rest. And you're worshiping somebody who is, by any interpretation, the Mahdi, the Antichrist, because he's done things that are so unbelievably supernatural. There's no way he could have done it except that Satan gave that power to him and continues to. Now, let's go to another subject just as odd and just as bizarre, and I call it double standards. This relates to recent events relating to a group of men and women and children who were obviously committing terrorist acts by training these young children in New Mexico how to handle and use weapons. And the intent was that these Muslim children were being taught by parents, by friends, to teach them to use weapons to shoot other classmates in schools, who knows how many states in the United States they were going to be sent. Now, the insanity becomes obvious in the fact that all of the government, all of the law enforcement people only cared about was the brutality of how these children were being starved and abused. The issue of it being terrorism was dropped by the government. The government said they were not committing acts of terror. Why did they do that? Well, if you know anything about what Obama said during his presidency, what George Bush said, and every other president except, thankfully, Trump, he said that we are not in a war against Islam. And when he said that, after 9/11, this is George W. Bush said that, it was proof positive to the world that we are not going to punish Muslims for hijacking those airplanes, for killing roughly 3,000 people, because it's their culture and it's their belief that all infidels must die. And they never held anybody accountable except for bin Laden himself. And by the way, we still don't even to this day know that bin Laden's dead, because they would not allow people to see his body. The only thing we have as proof of is that they dropped something overboard from a ship. And they said that though this man was responsible for the deaths of 3,000 human lives, he still had the right under Islamic law to be buried in a respectable way. And I say, if you kill that many people, you don't deserve anything. You killed people who were innocent bystanders. And the philosophy of Islam is that if you don't believe their religion, you're fodder, you're dead in their minds, so that when they kill people, they don't see it as wrong because they're serving Allah. Now, this is the philosophy Obama lives by, because in more ways than one, they prove that he did pray up to 5 times a day in the White House, and only a Muslim is required to pray at least 3, maybe 4 times a day. And because they couldn't really be with him in his prayer room, we don't know what he was doing. But if you're praying that many times a day, it's obvious that the guy is a Muslim himself. And that's why he advocated his presidency to filling most of the government positions within the White House with Muslim background individuals. Most of them were Muslims themselves. That's who he actually hired for key positions relating to public relations, foreign relations affairs between different nations and such as that. And that's why in the case of these 4 black Muslim women and 2 black Muslim men, they were freed after they were found to be responsible for training and teaching young children how to use weapons and to shoot them against people. And that in itself should be a real eye-opener to a lot of people, that the Muslims having a double standard like that, where they aren't responsible for committing these acts of terrorism. If you or me or any person white or black were doing such things, but we didn't have affiliations with Islam, we would be in jail within 24 hours after you were arrested, or within 2 seconds after you were arrested, you'd be in jail. And you would never get out. And in this situation, because they were Muslims, the government dismissed the charges. And then they said on the news, oh, well, it was just a technicality. It's a technicality. Right. Then the second double standard that comes into play is how women can do things to men. And in the case of this woman who was arrested being a key member of the Me Too movement, she was found guilty, being 30-something years old, of molesting a 17-year-old boy. And they dismissed the case. And why? Because she's a woman. If a man that age, 32, 34 years old, had done such a thing to a female 17-year-old girl, he would have probably been given 30 years to life for doing that. And he never would have gotten out. Well, not only did she never get a trial, they dismissed the whole thing and said, well, the young boy, whoever was molested, he got a free ride and she got a free ticket out of town. And she didn't hold any responsibility for her actions, nor do any women in this country, because they think if a woman does it to a man, it's perfectly all right. But if it's a guy and he does it to a woman, absolutely inhuman, brutal, disgusting, can't be tolerated, and that's the double standard there is between men and women. A woman can do anything she wants to a child or to a man, and they don't do anything to them. And then if you happen to be a man and you do it to a woman, you will never get out of jail. And that is the kind of insanity in this world today. The intent, really, I think, is Obama wants to continue to disrupt normal thinking, normal thoughts, and to project through every possible means he can, through the media, through high-definition television, what you will believe and what you will think. And that's why every time I turn around, I'm hearing people on YouTube saying, oh, well, you're in violation of the law, you're thinking something that the government says you can't think about. And the real question I have in my mind is, first of all, how do they intend to enforce these thought crime laws unless they can pry into your mind as you're thinking these things and then have you arrested because somehow or another they were able to interpret what you were thinking before you say them. That's why Edward Snowden had to flee into Russia, because he found out that this technology existed and he tried to tell the American public. This is what the government's doing to us. The government said, you can't talk about that. Obama don't want you to talk about that. So Edward Snowden did anyway. And what they do, they hunted him down like he was some sort of a defector, like he was a criminal. So the poor dude had to leave the United States, and he's now in Russia. And he knows if he ever tried to come back to the United States, they'd have him charged as a traitor, because he tried to tell the American people what Obama, what Bush, Clinton, and all the rest are still doing. Brainwashing, first of all, people's minds, and then somehow technologically being able to read other people's minds. And that's what thought crime was initiated for. Him using, I don't know how many billions of dollars as president of this country to hire 30, 40 different psychiatrists during the first couple of months of his presidency in 2009. And nobody knew what were these brain research projects all about. Well, that's to obviously pry into a person's subconscious mind and thereby use this technology that they've obviously already developed to outthink what you're going to think or what you're going to say. And then this way they can then control how many people might be wanting to contemplate shooting somebody. You just thinking it, they consider that guilt because you thought of it. And I'm like, how do you know what a person's thinking? Well, they're obviously able to now find out what you're thinking before you do. And that's what Obama started, and he's still doing it. 10 years after the fact, Obama is still using that same technology he started to control people's minds and to manipulate even how people think today. And I just shared it with you in the last 15 minutes of how perverted society has become. And it's not some over-the-hill idea that somehow people's minds have been manipulated, because now everybody thinks the opposite of how we always used to think. What was good is good, and what was bad is bad. And now our judicial system is saying that if you're a Muslim, you're automatically exempt from any wrongdoing because it's your belief, it's your culture. They can blow themselves up, they can shoot people because Allah tells them. And our society today says it's perfectly all right. And then you look at the opposite of this, and I'm referring to Christianity. Christianity does not advocate hate. It does not advocate violence. It does not practice violence. And yet it's Christians who are actually being hunted, who are being condemned by society. And you think, for what reason? What has a Christian done in society that's proven that they're a threat or a danger to other people? And the only answer you get is, well, we just don't like them, so we're not going to let them exist anymore. And it's coming soon, I guarantee you. They're going to outlaw Bibles. They're going to outlaw churches that practice Christianity. They're going to take away their tax-exempt status unless they permit and actually conjugate together other religious beliefs into the churches, where they have to practice Islam, they have to practice Hinduism, Buddhism. And if the churches don't do that, then the government's going to say, well, we got to shut you down because you're not doing what Obama intended to do, which was to create a global world religion. The world religion that's coming is going to be to worship him. It's not going to be to worship anything else. It's going to be to worship Obama himself. And that is scary, but if you see how the Democrats are now manipulating the whole government system in America, it isn't too far-fetched to think that the Democrats do have the power, they do have the authority and the control to destroy individuality in America, and they're doing it as I speak. They're destroying everything that made America good because they think they're right and everybody else who voted for Trump is wrong. I call that freedom of choice for us to have chosen President Trump as president. The Democrats don't see it that way. They think you made the wrong decision, so therefore you can't be allowed anymore to live a life that's unharassed, unprovoked, because the Democrats believe that socialism and communism is the only way for America to exist in the future. It has to be able to function like China does today, the way North Korea does today, the way that Russia even operates. And Hillary Clinton is definitely guilty of collusion against Russia because she bought a dossier from the Russians about Trump that was full of nothing but fake lies about who he is and what he was trying to accomplish when he ran for the presidency of the United States. And they didn't ever do anything to Hillary Clinton. That's the idiocy I'm talking about in America. And double standards really shouldn't exist, nor should political correctness. I know that Trump has been trying to destroy that retarded attitude that people brought up when Obama was president, that we have to love and idolize homosexuality. We have to love transgenders. We have to love bisexuals. We must hate what is normal. We have to hate what is what God intended it to be. And we have to hate Christians because they want to try to rewrite human history and make it whatever they want it to be, reflected in posterity. And that's wrong, because that's not what America was ever founded to be. We're founded as a country to be free-thinking American citizens who choose how we live and not force anybody else to believe the way that they think they should believe. And that's why Obama has such an idol worship status, a worship of something and somebody who is in every essence of the word evil. Because he did evil, he still does evil, and he's still not held accountable for his actions. And that to me is unbelievable. How he can do the things he did as president, give billions of dollars to Iran, who is a known terrorist country, and then nobody held him accountable, nobody ever had him indicted for these terrorist acts, and they are terrorist acts. He can placently worked in conjunction with known terrorist organizations and gave them financial assistance to continue these acts. And now he's gone even a step further to say to our government, anybody who does acts of terror and they're Muslim, expunge them. Expunge any wrongdoing they've ever done. And that's what just happened in New Mexico. They expunged those men and women who were teaching children to kill and said, you're not going to hold them accountable, so they let them go. And that's only one example. Sanctuary cities, Obama's idea. People can go there, they can shoot, they can kill, rape, murder anybody they want, and because it's out of the jurisdiction of law enforcement, they can't do anything to them, especially if they're illegal aliens. If they're illegal aliens, they say, well, you're not under the jurisdiction of our laws, so they let them go too. This is insanity. It is insanity. And yet people don't want to believe it, and they don't want to hear it, so they just close their minds. And that's the stupidity that's called America, the United States of America. The United States is now considered to be the United Socialist States of America because of what Obama started. And he's still very much out in the background working his global rhetoric. His whole philosophy in life is take over this country, take over this world, bring it into submission to this global world order that's already in existence. And Obama is continuing it, folks. And I just pray the Lord comes back soon. I know we're in a tribulation. People laugh me off like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, yeah, well, you just keep playing the game Obama's teaching you. Live the lie that Obama tells you, and sooner or later you're going to wake up and realize it's too late. You're already under his control. Sooner or later you're going to have to take his mark. When you do, you'll have nobody else to blame but yourself. Thank you.
The images shocked the world. Relentless bombings. Stunned survivors.
They've reported from around the world, challenged the powerful, and they bring all of this to every story that breaks.
We've got breaking news, and it's good news.
And touches your heart.
How